Well, happy Monday and welcome to Mondays with Michael Live here on Facebook in our Training Solutions room. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. This past weekend here in Washington, D.C., the weather was nice, but as you know, as you watch the news, the government was closed. Now the government was open today. Always a big deal here in D.C. because about 30% of the workers around here work for the government, and then about another 30% work for contractors. So it really affects, that doesn't affect other parts of the country, but it really affects D.C. quite a bit. But good to see that the government's back open again today. Something else happened this weekend. For those of you who follow me on Facebook, you know it was my 60th birthday on Saturday. Yes, the big 6-0. And Sharon, Nikki took me out for a nice little weekend of out and about around the Washington, D.C. area here. And they had a few goodies for me. And I'll post some of those pictures later on Facebook, so check them out. Well, today's topic is on leadership. As you know, we're trying to spread out the topics this spring, and today's topic is on leadership. And today's topic is on crafting a vision. Let me give you a little background on what we're going to talk about today. So as you know, we currently represent Wiley, formerly Inscape, and one of the assessments we use in our leadership development programs is the work of leaders. It's based on the book, Work of Leaders, done by Wiley and Inscape staff a few years ago. We can get you a copy of those if you want a copy of that book. And it did a lot of research on this whole idea of leadership. They did about a 3-year deeper dive in the whole concept of leadership. They interviewed hundreds of leadership experts. They interviewed hundreds of companies, hundreds of leaders. They also interviewed a bunch of followers and what they were looking for in a leader. And they came up with this 3-step model of crafting a vision, building alignment, and championing execution. And they built that into an everything disc assessment. So it's an assessment that we use in our leadership development programs. And today we're going to talk about the first step in that process, crafting a vision. Though when we teach the class, the first part of the program is really understanding the DISC model. For those of you that were here last week or saw the video last week, we talk about the DIS and C and how the DISC behavior affects your leadership style and those that you're trying to lead or report directly to you. But today we're going to talk about crafting a vision, which is the first step in the 3-step process. And in each step of the process, there are 3 drivers. We're going to talk about those 3 drivers today. In crafting a vision, and then there are 2 behaviors in each of those drivers. So we're going to talk about 6 behaviors today. We're going to talk about it fairly quickly, as I normally do here on Mondays with Michael. I'm going to go through it with you, give you some tips. But as always, if you chat in here post-session, if you'd like to have a copy of the assessment or take the assessment, let me know, and we'll give you a free sample of that assessment. So in crafting a vision, the 3 things we look at are exploration. Second is boldness. And the third is testing assumptions. And we're going to talk a little about each of those here. So in exploration, the assessment measures 2 behaviors. And the 2 behaviors we measure there are remaining open, keeping open to new ideas. We work with a lot of leaders that they seek closure. They want to make these decisions right away. I've got an idea. I got to move forward. And they're not keeping open to other possibilities or others' input into the idea they'd like to move forward. So the best practice here in this behavior is remaining open, remain open to new ideas from others once you start putting out that vision out there. The second behavior in exploration is prioritizing the big picture. A lot of leaders like to get into the minutia, like to get into the weeds, if you will, right away. And this is not the time to get into the weeds. You will get into the weeds eventually, and we'll get into those details. But this is crafting the vision. So this is prioritizing the big picture. Look at the big picture. Don't get into details. Some tips from the book, and if you'd like a copy of the book, just let us know. For exploration is set aside specific time for open-ended exploration. Keep an open mind. Get ideas from a lot of folks. Let the ideas circle and percolate instead of pushing ahead with your initial thoughts. Get some feedback from the group. Remember, there'll be time later for planning. Look outside your group or organization to understand your idea a little bit and to get some feedback. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So look outside your department or even outside your organization. Ask questions to define the big picture to your groups to try to get some feedback, as we talked about. And any details that may come up in this discussion, put in what we like to call the parking lot or off to the side for now. As I said, there'll be time for getting into details later, but this is not the time to do that. So that's the first driver. The second driver is being bold and how boldness drives the vision. And here we measure a couple of other behaviors. We first measure being adventurous. Now, we work with a lot of leaders that tend to be cautious in this process. But in this particular case, we want to be adventurous, be bold, think outside the box. What can this vision really be? Where can you really take this team or organization? And the second one in boldness is to be able to speak out. Share with the team individually if you need to. Share with those you trust outside the team in the organization. And also talk to folks outside the organization and sharing your ideas and crafting this big vision. So some tips from the book on boldness. Make a list of pros and cons to focus on the benefits of the pros. Show your confidence in the group by challenging them with a bold idea. Share responsibility for your bold vision with others that are around you, especially the team that reports to you. Have a plan in place in case you find yourself intimidated by negative reactions. You're going to get some of this negative pushback, possibly from those who work around you or those within the company. And assume you'll have to deal with the resistance along the way. So kind of have a plan with that pushback as you get speaking out about boldness and being bold when it comes to your vision. And then the third driver in the first step is testing assumptions. So in testing assumptions, we talk about seeking counsel. And seeking counsel from those inside the organization you trust, but even more importantly, seeking counsel from those outside the organizations you trust. And when we work with leaders, we constantly talk to them about building this professional network. If you're a CFO, you should be involved in CFO organizations outside of your business. So you get to kind of bounce off these best practices and learn best practices from those who are in your workspace, but maybe in a different organization. So seek counsel both outside the department, inside the organization, outside the organization. Don't be one of those leaders that decides independently when crafting a vision and say, okay, I'm the boss, and this is the vision, this is what it's going to be. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. You want to seek counsel, get some input from others. And then you want to explore implications, that there may be some negative implications based on this vision you're trying to craft. So instead of pushing forward, we work with a lot of leaders that just like to push forward, and there'll be a time to push forward later on when you're executing the vision, but now it's time to explore implications of that vision. What would the impact be negatively to either you, to other departments in the organization, or outside the organization with your competition or folks who may be your competition? So some tips for testing assumptions from the book. Find people who you trust to consult with, and reciprocity in that going back and forth. Be there for them as they're being there for you. Approach people individually rather than in groups, so have these one-on-one meetings. We talked about looking outside your organizations. And have each group member make predictions on outcomes independently to estimate your chances of success. So as you go around the table and really move forward this vision, get some feedback from your team on how they feel this is going to play out and how successful you're going to be. So that's in a nutshell the first part of crafting a vision. There's a lot of information there. Participants take this assessment prior to coming to the class. They see where they fall on the continuum in each of these 6 behaviors. Some behaviors leaders are going to be very strong and very natural to them. Some of these behaviors are going to take some work, or we like to say it may take more energy for you to demonstrate these behaviors. You may want to surround yourself with others that show some of these behaviors to help you in this process. So that's step 1 in the process. Crafting a vision, building alignment, and championing execution. As we go through our sessions in January and into February and into March, we're going to come back to the next 2 steps in this Work of Leaders model, and we're going to talk about each of them and the 6 behaviors in each of them. So we will talk about building alignment down the line, so stay tuned for that. Our session next week will be for trainers and HR consultants. As I said, we're going to do a series of sessions for them too. So our session next Monday is going to be on preparation skills and creating learning environments. What do you need to do to prepare your learners and the room, the environment itself, to get the maximum learning participation from your participants in your training classes? And how do you create a learning environment? So how do you make sure that the place and your active participation and getting them to participate will make your training programs a success? So we'll do that next Monday. Mondays with Michael Live. One last commercial. This week on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. we will have a webinar on the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. We'll put that in the chat here shortly for you to take a look at. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next Monday, Mondays with Michael Live. Take care.